And welcome. Raising Your Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you doing this week? How are things feeling? I hope all is going well and feeling good. Things are good here. Weather's still beautiful. Everyone's healthy. Margaret and Francis were on a school trip for a couple of days. That went well. Peter is working hard at college. My elder son, Aaron, had his 44th birthday. Hard to believe. All is well and moving along as expected, which is nice. So, plenty to talk about this week. As always, the VP debate, the January 6th filing, Trump's ridiculous $100,000 watch, some more stoic goodness, the benefits of strength training, and the music of the Eagles and J.D. Souther. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things were pulling me down? My main up this week was that I had a couple of days home by myself. I mentioned Margaret and Francis had a school trip. So I had Monday night, all day Tuesday night, and most of Wednesday through about 8:30 at night. And that's just a really lovely and rare experience. Margaret and I actually talked about that over the years. For some reason, I get that opportunity now and then, and she almost never has. I think I actually left one time on purpose just to give her that experience. But it's great, all to yourself, only do what you want to do every moment, all day. Of course, I don't do much different. My rhythms are pretty well set. But there's still something just nice and easy and relaxing about it. Now, after a day or two, it starts to feel a little isolated and empty. So 2 days is probably the perfect length, but I did really enjoy it. So that was nice. For my downs, that was also related to having the house to myself because it wasn't just me. It was also with our dog, Bijou. She's a great dog, though I'm honestly not much of a pet person. But she's a good girl, for sure. The problem is she's very attached to Margaret and a little nervous by nature. She's a standard poodle. So when Margaret goes away for a couple of days, Bijou tends to get diarrhea. And that is a pretty reliable down for me. I worry about it beforehand. Is it going to happen? I'm on guard for it during the time. Is it happening yet? And when it finally kicks in, I'm even more worried because, you know, what happens, right? And I'm worried until Margaret gets back. So it did kick in this time, as expected. I had to leave the house a couple of times during that day. When I did, I had to close her in the kitchen to keep her away from the rugs, which are hard to clean based on past experience. So I'm worried about it when I'm out. When I come back, I'm worried about what I'll find. Fortunately, it was all fine this time. Nothing to clean up. Good girl. But there's just a classic down, right? Something worrying on your mind, distracting and disrupting, adding weight to your inner life. Not a huge thing, obviously, mostly funny, but still a good example of a down. All right, that's ups and downs. Next up, top stories. This week, the big thing for me is the combination of the VP debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance and the release of the evidence file in the January 6th case against Trump. The debate was a big event, but not really all that newsworthy, ultimately. The one moment getting the most attention was when J.D. refused to say that Trump lost the 2020 election. That really is still so remarkable. 4 years later, all the evidence. I mean, obviously, Trump lost that election fair and square. He himself has said so, at different times. But officially, J.D. and the campaign still will not acknowledge it. That really tells you everything you need to know about the danger these guys represent to our country. But especially when you combine that with the revelations in the new January 6th filing that came out this week. First, it could not be more clear that Donald Trump was directly involved in trying to overturn that election and that he knew he had lost. He knew exactly what he was doing. Then Mike Pence, under a lot of pressure, refused to go along with their illegal plan, so he stopped it from happening. J.D. Vance has said he would have done what Pence didn't. So what do we think will happen next time? I mean, there is zero doubt about it. They're telling us what they'll do. Trump is already saying he'll only accept the results if he wins. That's not how it works, of course, but he doesn't care how it works. He just wants power no matter what. The only good news this time is that they aren't in power, so they have no actual authority to try the things they did last time. But if they win, is there any doubt the things they would do to stay in power, like forever? It is 100% certain based on everything they're saying and doing. It really is. Honestly, if you're paying attention to this part of what they're saying, the only way you can support them is if you genuinely believe we should no longer be a democracy. And of course, there are people who feel that way, but most people don't. And everyone who doesn't needs to get out and do their part to defeat him in November. These Liz Cheney events are the perfect example of that. She would never in a million years support Kamala Harris or any Democrat if Donald Trump wasn't a real and present danger to our constitutional system. You know she wouldn't, right? But he is a real threat, and she cares about that, as we all should, above all else. So that is the patriotic thing to do, and it's the only patriotic thing to do. The other news item, almost too ridiculous to mention, but it's Trump's big new announcement about his new line of watches for sale. This is just so gobsmacking and embarrassing as a country. The Republican nominee basically tied in the polls a former president in the middle of his campaign is taking the time to sell stuff. Not campaign merch, not helping him and others get elected. It's simply to make more money right now. Isn't he already rich? What the hell is he doing? These watches are $100,000. And of course, they're ridiculous. A couple weeks ago, he announced a new Trump cryptocurrency for sale. He is selling commemorative coins, trading cards with superhero-style cartoons of him on them, incredibly gaudy gold sneakers. He's like the worst kind of glitzy televangelist hustler. Slap some big false eyelashes on him, and he's basically Tammy Faye Baker. Dating myself there. Seriously, though, he wants to be the president of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, not because he cares about helping people or leading the country, but because he wants to stay out of jail and make some more money on the deal. He's just a cheap, slimy hustler con man. And he has absolutely no shame about any of it. Is it unseemly for a potential president to be selling stuff during the campaign? Does it reflect poorly on the office or on the country? Who cares? If he can make some money off it, that's all that matters. And anyone who thinks differently is a chump in his eyes. That's Donald Trump. Gold toilets, cheap trinkets, no evidence of having an actual, normal human soul. On the election watch, I wanted to say a bit more about the situation in Springfield and what it says about the future if Trump wins this election. So, of course, there was a big, made-up story about Haitian migrants eating people's pets. We've all heard about that. And a lot of hatred has been directed towards those migrants, even though they're here legally and they were invited there by the state and local government. So this one guy owns a metal fabrication company, lifelong Republican, two-time Trump voter, comes out and says, hey, we have 30 Haitian employees here out of over 300. They're actually great workers. They're great people. Happy to have them. Would hire 30 more if I could, just to counter all the malicious stuff that's being said about them, and for no good reason. So after he makes that statement, just sharing his positive perspective on the situation, his personal experience, he and his family have received so many threats that the FBI had to come and say to them, we think these are credible. Here are some things we recommend you do to protect yourself. They're now having to drive different routes to work and school every day so they don't create a pattern and put them in danger. They've installed new security cameras. They had to go buy guns for the first time. This guy said, I'm really not a gun guy, but they had to go out and get them now. The whole family, including their young daughter, are taking firearms training now to protect themselves from these threats. Imagine what it's like to live in actual danger like that for you, for your children. This is what thugs and bullies do. And this is what all our lives will be like if Trump wins. Anyone who speaks against him will be targeted. And he will encourage that and support it and protect the people who do it. With the people he'll have around him, plus the Supreme Court immunity decision, there'll be nothing to stop him from doing exactly that, and he will love it. Honestly, this is why he raves about Kim Jong-un all the time. He wants that same kind of total control. Love him, praise him, worship him, or else. That's what's at stake in this election. It's crazy, but it is absolutely true. All right, that's top stories. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week, we talked about finding meaning and purpose in our lives, and that our ultimate purpose is to just serve the people in our lives. This week, I want to revisit another Stoic idea, Amor Fati, love the fates. Whatever happens, good or bad, love it all. I'm thinking about this because I had a strange period the other day of being in just a truly bad mood. I was angry, short-tempered, frustrated, and none of it really made sense with anything that was happening at the time. I mean, Bijou was annoying me, constantly bugging me, like she had to go out, but I would take her out and she wouldn't do anything. That was a bummer. Peter sent a note asking me to take care of something in the middle of something I was doing. I was scrambling to get a project figured out, having some tech troubles. All that was annoying, but not all that uncommon. And the intensity of my anger during that period didn't seem justified by the situation. I assume it was just a chemical thing, something got out of whack, pulled me into a grumpy state, lasted about an hour, and then it was back to normal. It was almost like an allergic reaction to something in the air. But it's the kind of thing you could feel bad about, right? You could think ill of yourself for what's wrong with me, what was that about? You could spend some time thinking about it. But the Amor Fati idea helps with this in a couple of ways. First, I can look at the experience and sort of like it. Not enjoy it necessarily, not be happy it happened, but still get kind of a kick out of it as just being a weird part of life. You know what I mean? Also, maybe it's a little uncomfortable and inconvenient, but it's also part of serving Margaret and Francis on their trip, supporting them, taking one for the team. Overall, it just makes it easier to not put extra energy into it. Good, bad, it's all life. We roll with it, we love it, and on we go. Not always an easy perspective, but I find it pretty consistently helpful. So that's Inner Game Gold this week. Amor Fati, love the fates. Next up, raise your outer game. This week, I want to talk again about fitness. And I guess the short version is, I want to suggest again that you start going to the gym if you aren't already doing it, or do some kind of consistent strength training. It's on my mind because this morning I was putting on my socks, and I was reminded that it wasn't that long ago, like a couple of years ago, that I couldn't do that standing up anymore. I couldn't balance on one foot at a time and put on my socks like I'd always been able to do. And I remember at the time thinking, really? I can't do this anymore? This is what happens as you get older. I have to sit down to put on my pants and socks now? And there were other things like that too, and I might have mentioned these before, but we have stools in our kitchen. I got to the point where I couldn't step up on those anymore to reach something on the top shelf. I couldn't stretch my leg high enough. I wasn't strong enough to boost myself up there. Trying to rotate the tires on our car, I couldn't do that myself anymore. The tires were just too heavy in that crouched position. It was really killing me. It honestly seemed dumb and risky to keep doing it. But now, 2 years later, I can do all those things, and pretty easily. I'm older, but more capable in all kinds of ways. All the articles you see online with fitness tests for your age, I'm ahead of all of those. My Aura app says my heart age is 8 years younger than my calendar age. That probably has something to do with pickleball, though. But the important point is, none of this is about me. I didn't do anything special or unique. I just started going to the gym and kept going. I don't work out hard. I don't do multiple sets. I don't work to failure. I barely break a sweat. I do get stiff and sore, but that is about getting older. But it's way more than worth it. It truly has transformed my daily experience and made me just feel better about pretty much everything in every way. So that's the story. It's almost a cliche, especially for us elders, but I am the poster boy for the benefits of strength training. To be fair, I do have a pretty easy setup here. There's a gym less than a mile away. It's pretty reasonably priced. I have the time. I probably spend an hour each time all told, and I go twice a week. I know not everyone has that kind of access. But I bet with all the options out there, you can still find something that works for you, and you will love it. I do want to say, this is different from cardio. I still run when I can. I play pickleball, which is great for cardio and super helpful. But it doesn't give you what strength training does. So let's raise your outer game this week. If you're not doing strength training, please start. Take it easy at first. Don't overdo it, but do it, especially as you get older. There's probably nothing you could do to increase and extend your quality of life than strength training. Next up, our challenge of the week. Two-parter this week, the two things we've mentioned, Amor Fati and going to the gym. If you're not going to the gym now, think about how that might work. Where would you go? How much would it cost? And how much time would it take? Do they have a trainer you could work with to get started? When would you go? How could you make all that work? To get started, you're going to need to answer those questions or they'll keep you from doing it. So write them down, make some calls, figure it out. For Amor Fati, just think about that idea. Sit down for a few minutes and reflect on it. What does it mean to you to love the fates? How does it apply to your life? How might things be different if you thought this way? What could you do to remind yourself of the idea? Keep the framing, the perspective in mind. Just give it some good thought and see what that does for you. Next up, highly recommended. So I finished the Munich book I mentioned. Honestly, a little disappointed. I guess I didn't feel the payoff was there for all the buildup. Still well done, but 3.5 to 4 rather than a 5. Reading a new one now called We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. I absolutely loved his earlier series called The Thursday Murder Club. Not sure about this one yet. I'll let you know as I get further into it. Our various TV shows we haven't picked back up with since Margaret and Francis got back from their trip, so nothing to report there. I am into season 2 of Better Call Saul now, and I just cannot love that show more. And the music is especially good. It's weird, it's fresh. The closing theme is one of the coolest, greasiest, funkiest grooves ever. Just love that. The big music thing this week was the Eagles. I was not a huge Eagles fan at the time. I got more into them later. But man, listening back, some of those songs are just the most beautiful, timeless, melancholy tracks ever. New Kid in Town, Lying Eyes, Desperado, Wasted Time, just over and over. They nailed it. So it's on my mind because J.D. Souther died recently. He was a songwriter for a lot of people, as well as an artist in his own right. But his biggest successes came writing songs with the Eagles. He co-wrote some of their biggest and best songs, Best of My Love, Victim of Love, Heartache Tonight, New Kid in Town. Just again, timeless, perfect songs. I heard another story recently. Maybe my favorite Eagles song is Take It Easy. Right? Standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona. Oh, what a great line. We actually went to Winslow, Arizona when we lived down in that area. Stood on the corner, took a picture. Pretty fun. Anyway, that song was written by Jackson Browne, another great artist, or at least it was started by him. The story is Glenn Frey, I never know for sure, from the Eagles, lived upstairs from Jackson Browne, and he would hear him writing on his piano every day. They knew each other a bit, and Browne had been working on the song Take It Easy, but it wasn't done. So Frey, for the Eagles' first album, they hadn't been writing as much at that point, so they were looking for outside songs. He asked Browne to finish it up. Browne finally said, okay, you do it. And between the two of them, they created that great classic song. It was the first song on the Eagles' debut album. It was their first single, kicked off their whole career. It was also on Jackson Browne's album. He has a nice version of it, too. Anyway, just really loving and reconnecting with the Eagles this week. And rest in peace, J.D. Souther. That's highly recommended for this week. For more ideas on how to love your life and raise your inner game in general, check out the Raise Your Inner Game book or the Sports Academy training if you're an athlete, raiseyourinnergame.com for that. Otherwise, that's it for this week. Another good one. On we go. I hope you have a great week. Keep up the good work. I'll talk to you next time.